55 minutes of current and relevant business talks. That's what awaits you on Business Morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the program. I'm Imi John Mekwa, and we start from the oil prices, where it steadied on Wednesday after falling previously on concerns of U.S. tariffs set to be unveiled later on today, and that may deepen global trade war that could limit crude demand. However, we hear it may not be as stiff as it threatened to be before now. So we see Brent this morning losing 2 cents to $74.47 a barrel after slipping 0.4% on Tuesday. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 1 cent because the trouble is coming from the U.S., I guess. $71.21 a barrel after it lost 0.4%. Prices rose to their highest in 5 weeks. That happened on Monday. The White House has confirmed that President Donald Trump will impose new tariffs today. The secondary reciprocal tariff today is supposed to start, but we expect more details from a speech that we are waiting for. Additionally, U.S. oil field inventories painted a mixed picture about supply and demand from the world's biggest producer and consumer. Of course, that's the U.S. And U.S. crude oil inventories rose by 6 million barrels in the week ended March 28. That's according to the American Petroleum Institute. The gasoline inventories, however, fell 1.6 million barrels, and distillate stocks lost 11,000 barrels. Now, Nigeria, Angola, and Ghana have fulfilled their capital commitment towards establishing the Africa Energy Bank, and this represents 44% of the minimum required funding for from the African Petroleum Producers Organization, APO members, to initiate the bank's operations. So Dr. Umar Farouk Ibrahim, the Secretary General of APO, announced this progress during the Congo Energy and Investment Forum. The bank, the Africa Energy Bank, aims to finance oil and gas projects across the continent, addressing funding challenges posed by traditional Western financial institutions' reluctance to support fossil fuel initiatives due to environmental concerns. Apple has requested each of its 18 member states to contribute $83 million, targeting a total initial capitalization of $5 billion. Beyond Nigeria, Angola, and Ghana, 5 additional member states, that's Algeria, Benin, and the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, as well as Ivory Coast, have pledged to make their payments, aligning with the bank's goal to commence operation in the first half of this year. That's just about 3 months away. And this was followed by the Bonny Terminal, which produced 6.3 million barrels in the month under review. The Bonny Terminal recorded 8.1 million barrels in January. Now, Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has appointed Bayo Ojulari, a former Shell executive, to head the state-owned oil firm NNPC Limited, as the country seeks to raise oil production and revitalize its refining capacity. Mr. Ojulari replaces Mr. Mele Kyari with the appointment effective immediately, and according to presidential spokesman Bayo Onanuga. Ojulari was most recently Chief Operating Officer at the Nigeria Consortium Renaissance Africa Co., which now owns Shell's former onshore subsidiary in the country. Prior to that, he was head of Shell's Nigeria's exploration unit. Tinubu also replaced the board of NNPC, appointing a new 11-man team to drive reforms and boost efficiency in the oil sector. Well, let's leave the oil space for just a bit. The Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise has raised concerns over the government's proposal to ban solar panel imports, warning that it could worsen Nigeria's energy crisis by making solar solutions more expensive and less accessible. While the CPPE supports the goal of increasing domestic production, they advocate for a gradual transition with careful planning and studies on local production capacity to avoid disruptions. The CPPE recommends fiscal incentives for local solar panel manufacturers, a reduction in import duties on essential components, and clarification from the government to reassure investors in the renewable energy sector. Now, business confidence in Africa's most populous nation rose to the highest level in 14 months. That happened in March as businesses report rising demand for their goods and services. According to Stanbic IBTC's latest Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, the headline index climbed to 54.3 in March, and that's up 53.7 in February. That's the highest level since January 2024. The report notes that March uptick reflects a solid improvement in business conditions for the fourth consecutive month, driven by a sharp increase in new orders, and that's the fastest rate in 14 months. One of the most notable findings in the report was a decline in input cost inflation, which reached its lowest level of 23.18 in February this year, the steepest decline since May 2023. Stanbic IBTC adds that the private sector's performance was buoyed by stronger domestic demand, resulting in expanded output across major sectors, including manufacturing, trade, as well as real estate. A leading Nigerian financial services company, CreditDirect, has announced a strategic pivot from lending to a comprehensive digital finance company with the launch of several innovative fintech products. At its This is CreditDirect, the product demo event that was in Lagos over the weekend. The company unveiled digital offerings targeting retail investment, payments for individuals and businesses, an intelligent credit lifestyle and revenue AI assistant, Clara, and a buy now, pay later solution for merchants and individuals.
Would explore the role of technology in shaping the next generation. Africa's leading embedded finance business, CreditDirect, has launched several exciting and innovative products. The product launch at the weekend in Lagos represents the culmination of a deliberate digital transformation strategy that began in 2022. It attracted industry leaders, fintech experts, enthusiasts, media representatives, and key stakeholders. Managing Director CEO CreditDirect, Chukwuma Nwanze, says beyond the product launch, this event is about telling the company's bigger story of transformation, intent, and market leadership.
It's a moment that allows us to step forward and say boldly, this is CreditDirect. We're a digital first, capital efficient, and purpose-driven finance company. We are focused, tested. We are on the verge of building something momentous in Nigeria and in Africa. Our products are designed to support individuals, support businesses. We enable people's wealth grow by the investment products we offer, and we do this with an embedded finance philosophy. This model of ours is sustainable, is scalable, and we are very disciplined. I'll tell you, we've built easily the most capital-efficient financial services business in Nigeria.
The new product lineup includes the CreditDirect mobile app, an all-in-one platform where customers can pay, invest, and grow their finances with an interest-earning wallet that grows money daily with no restrictions on fund access. There's also Yield, which offers a digital wealth creation platform for individuals and businesses, as well as the cornerstone of the new offerings, Checkout, CreditDirect's end-to-end digital buy now, pay later solution.
We are embedding financial solutions into the fabric of commerce by supporting over 200,000 businesses in the next 5 years. We want to serve 5 million customers also within this period. The strategic integration will drive sustainable growth for our merchants while increasing profitability for CreditDirect, our credit portfolio, right? This is not just buy now, pay later. It is credit as a growth engine. This is CreditDirect.
It's building your financial story quietly and consistently, because someday, maybe not today, maybe next month, but definitely someday, you would need access to credit. And when that moment comes, everything you've already done, from spending to making your payments to growing your funds with Yield, becomes part of how we understand you. You're not starting from zero, you're already known, already trusted, and that's the real power behind the credit-led ecosystem. That's why we're not just building tools or products, but a platform that is ready for you today. ready for whatever tomorrow brings.
The event featured live product demonstrations, interactive sessions, and insightful panel discussions with industry experts. The CEO speaks more to the company's expansion drive and what sets it apart from the others.
We've been in existence for 18 years. Beyond being in existence of 18 years, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of one of the most trusted banks in Nigeria, trusted banking groups in Nigeria, the FCMB Group. So your money is safe. We're a business that is proven, tried, and trusted. We are regulated by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and we have had millions of customers who have over the years enjoyed our services.
Credit Direct Finance Company Limited is a leading digital finance company in Nigeria. The leadership of the company says it remains committed to building Africa's leading embedded finance business and to ensure that access to financial solutions is a universal opportunity.
And now let's talk about NNPC Foundation. They say they have projects for social impact. We have the Managing Director of NNPC Foundation, Mrs. Emanuela Arukwe, joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Ms. Arukwe, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me here today.
Great. So, I mean, a lot of people hear NNPC, and of course, everybody think of oil and gas, but I guess the foundation has a different story, and now you are launching, or you have launched, a cataract excision program. Why did you choose this area to intervene in the social space in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. NNPC Foundation is the social impact arm of NNPC, and our critical areas of focus is health, education, environment, and also access to energy as an energy company. One of the reasons why we chose cataract is because cataract is one of the preventable diseases that causes blindness. And in Nigeria, about 43% of cases of blindness are caused by cataract, and it's one of the areas people don't really look out for. And so we felt it's really one area, if you could install sight to people, especially the indigent and underserved communities, that will help the economic growth. Because when people are blind, they are completely cut off from economic development. So that's one of the areas we felt is a quick intervention, because you can do the surgery and get people eyes restored. So that's why we chose that particular area.
So how does it work? People want to be part of this program. How do they get on board?
Okay, this is a program that's across the 6 geopolitical zone, and we had done the first stage, and it was very successful. That was in the Ogun State and Lagos State. That was in January, and so we had over 1,002 people who had been operated upon. So we are in the southeast and the southwest. We've really done a lot of intervention. I'm glad to say that a lot of people have come on board, and we are doing it in various locations. We have our jingles, we've interacted with everyone. So all you need to do throughout this week, screening is going on in the locations. And so what you just need to do, nothing, you don't need to register, you don't need to do anything. Just get there early before 9 o'clock. Screening starts by 9, and then once you're tested positive for cataract, you'll be penciled down for the surgery, which commences on the 7th. That's next Monday. So we are doing this program in the prevalent areas of cataract. We are doing the southeast. We are in Abia State. We are in Ebonyi State. And then we have some other areas in both Anambra and also Imo State. But the major places this is going on, it's in Ebonyi State and also in Ebonyi State and also in Abia State. For the south, in Goa, it's a lot of places. We have a lot of cataract in Bayelsa. So we are in Bayelsa, and also we are doing it in Rivers and Cross River. We started this Rivers and Akwa Ibom and Bayelsa. We've started since Monday. That's 2 days ago, and we'll be running throughout this week. So all you just need to do is just to come into the centers, and then you'll be attended to. And if you're positive, we would go ahead to pencil you down for the surgery that commences next week, 7th. And everyone who tests positive will be operated upon. So you just have to make sure you get there. We still have about 4 days to run this project this week for the screening. Thank you.
Oh, interesting, Mr. Arukwe. So, but I guess people, even if I was in Abia State, I would like to know, like, where are the centers, more details for people to be able to go there. Perhaps some people might even need to travel. If you're in Umuahia, for instance, and an individual in Aba would like to participate, something like that, to guide individuals who would be interested in this.
Well, the centers are well located. We've been on the news. The centers, for example, in Umuahia, we are in the Catholic Mission Hospital in Umuahia. We're also in Aba. We have the center for this time around. When we did Lagos and Ogun State, we had to move around to different centers just to have the wider coverage. In Umuahia, we have in Umuahia and Aba. Most states, we have more than one center, and all the center locations are already there. And right now, we already have enough people coming out to test from different places, because we've done a lot of mobilization. We started the mobilization over the weekend, and all the television stations, the radio stations, and we went through the churches, went through the local chiefs and the local heads. And so we have a lot of turnouts. We're having a lot of turnout. We expect to even exceed the targeted numbers.
Okay, so the surgery will also hold at the same center in the different states, but that will be next week,
yes.
I guess.
Yes, once you test in the same center, the surgery will be holding back in the same center. Once you test positive, you'll be operated on the same center, yes.
All right, so other than this cataract excision, is there any other program we're expecting from NNPC Foundation?
Yes, NNPC Foundation, we have a lot of programs. We have a lot of programs we're running in these areas of intervention, our focus area, which is really education, health, environment, and also access to energy. Right now, this month, we are running some projects concurrently. We've started since last month to distribute STEM books. That's the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's the STEM books. And so we are working in the junior secondary school and senior secondary school. This is the second phase. Last year, we did that project in 15 schools across 12 states and 3 in the Federal Capital Territory. And now the project is started already, and we are commencing the second phase by next Monday, that's 7th of this month, to distribute books to 25 schools all across 24 states and also the Federal Capital Territory. We are distributing 1,000 books, and also 1,000 books for the whole state. That will bring us to 40,000 books across the geopolitical zone. This is just a pilot project we are running in STEM, because STEM education is the way to go, because that's what most countries are practicing, and it's one method you can make a country technologically advanced and sufficient. So we are running this project, and we're also going to be doing mentorship and also training of the teachers, and also we are coming up with our STEM quizzes. So apart from this project that is going on starting next week, we also have other projects like the farmers. We have the vulnerable farmers, training of the vulnerable farmers across the 6 geopolitical zone. Most of our projects, like cataract, is run across the 6 geopolitical zone. I had said we are running in the southeast, southwest, and southeast and south-south. We'll be going for even the cataract project in the northwest, north central, and northeast, starting from May, because of the Salah period and all that fasting. So with the farmers again, we are doing it across the 6 geopolitical zone. We intend to train 6,000 farmers. And right now, we are commencing in the southeast, south-south, and southwest. And so this is another program I will be commencing next week. And so we are training farmers in the best method of making sure they have the best technology, innovation, climate change, different technologies they need to do. And after this, they will be given seedlings. Because in foundation, we look at sustainable development, so look at sustainable technology. It's one thing to give farmers seedlings if they don't know how to use it, and you will not get the best yield. So rather than teach people to fish, teach people to give people fish, you teach people to fish. Because we want to make sure the farmers understand the technology to have the highest yield, preserve their crops, and then we can give them seedlings. So we have a lot of projects lined up in the foundation, but these are the projects that are coming on this April right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the word sustainable in giving that your programs and all of that. So I guess that the foundation would have sustainability in focus, and as well as targeting especially Nigerians or residents in the rural part, because there seem to be those who are mostly left out of a lot of programs and intervention, both from the government and even the private sector, NGOs?
Yes, that's what the foundation is targeting. We're not looking at rich farmers, we're looking at vulnerable farmers. So we are working with the local government, we are working at the cooperative societies, we are working with our consultants to make sure that this is given to the rich vulnerable farmers, not rich farmers, farmers that don't have access. So we are training them how to make sure that they have the best yield, what they need to do, and how to protect their crops. And then we'll give them those who qualify based on the criteria set, will be given seedlings and monitor to make sure that they're able to produce. It's the vulnerable farmers. And our locations are really based on where these vulnerable farmers are located and where farming is actually going on. So it's cuts across the nation. I'm sure we'll be able to have more than 6,000 farmers coming on board. Thank you.
Yeah, because, sometimes interventions, we've seen it turn to disaster in some cases, and in other cases, issues of is it the people who should get this help that are getting it? So I wonder how the foundation is ensuring that you actually reach the people who need it. You're not going through third parties so that it's being diverted or sentiments are being applied in sharing these benefits.
Well, the programs we've launched, we use a very credible thing, like what we are doing with the NYSC program, because NYSC is a veritable group. So we are going through actually the local government, not really that, we're going through the cooperatives, and we have our consultants on ground working with the cooperatives. Also, yes, we work with the local authorities, but we are really going through the cooperatives to make sure that the farmers are, that's why we are looking at the areas where farming is actually taking place, and people on board are people who are already on board the cooperatives. Because really, if you're on board the smaller cooperatives that they have for people who are farming, it's easier to reach you. So we are looking at verifiable data than just leave it open. As much as possible, we try as much as possible to make sure we work with credible people, and we do a lot of verification in our jobs, verification in what we do. So that's why in every project we run, we're on the field. Apart from our consultants there, as the staff are there on field, monitoring and making sure. And we always go back to evaluate and have our projects evaluated by independent parties. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. Emanuela Arukwe, Managing Director of NNPC Foundation. Wish you the best, as you go out there to make impacts.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll be looking at that CBN's review of allocation of terminals, what it might mean to the oil and gas sector. That's after the break. Stay with us here on Business Morning.
There are places you would like to go. There are faces you would like to see.
My palm is bruised. It's a tiny scar, but it's very painful.
Too many exciting things happening all the time.
Welcome back to watching Business Morning on Channels Television. The federal government has reviewed the current allocation of terminals to pre-shipment inspection agents for the oil and gas sector. The regulator says that this is to enhance efficiency, that's CBN, that is to enhance efficiency in the sector and ensure transparency in crude oil exports. The bank notes that the restructuring is aimed at improving efficiency and maintaining strict oversight in Nigeria's oil and gas exports operations. Also, we know that the government has reviewed the PIAs assigned to the monitoring and evaluation of agents. So let's break this down and find out how it really concerns, well, the average Nigerian. And we're doing that with Professor Damilola Olawuyi. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, obviously in the oil and gas sector. Prof, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
I must say that you will help us to understand a whole lot of things, concerning this, because, an average man would be, oh, okay, what's the allocation of terminals? What's this review of it? Help us to understand the bigger picture of all of this and the essence of CBN's intervention or review at this time.
Well, thank you very much. It's a comprehensive process. When we talk of pre-shipment inspection, it's normally designed to ensure that government's interest is protected when products leave our terminals to go abroad. So the export of our products and the sale of our products. So normally such inspection is meant to check that what is going out is in accordance to what is declared on paper, is to prevent duty evasion, to prevent capital flights. So to ensure that we get value for what is being exported from the oil and gas sector. That is the aim of pre-shipment inspection. Normally in other parts of the world, this is carried out by government itself. So we're talking of maybe a government entity doing this. But in some countries too, they outsource that to private sector entities. So through a procurement process, they get private sector participants to be doing that on behalf of government. And what you have just reported is exactly what has happened. So the CBN has appointed those private sector participants that will be doing those pre-shipment inspection on behalf of government. Of course, there are questions why government will not do this by itself. There are questions why this is being done by the CBN. You will recall that before now, it was the NNPC that was responsible for pre-shipment inspection or appointing private sector participants to do it on their behalf. But some months back, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did transfer that responsibility to the CBN. And now the CBN, in exercise of that authority given by the president, has just appointed those that will be doing the pre-shipment inspection.
So I believe I saw customs is also part of these agents.
Yes. So like I said, when you talk of the government, because we are talking of avoiding evasion of custom duties as well. So normally the government entities that are interested in pre-shipment inspection will be NNPC, CBN, customs, and any other entity that is interested, even tax authorities, those monitoring the fiscal aspect of the export of petroleum products.
But does this help us to bring sanity or transparency in our crude management? Because, well, unfortunately, we did see last release showing that there's been a drop in our crude production. And we've been talking about oil theft and perhaps uncertainty and questions around the area of oil theft. Oh, it's the professionals that can do it and all of that. Does this bring sanity to that value chain?
The answer is yes. This, when you outsource some of the responsibilities away from government entities, the thinking behind it is to promote efficiency. The private sector is often known for efficiency, to be able to get the job done, to achieve results, quick results. So that's indeed one of the policy thinking behind outsourcing this responsibility and selecting private sector experts and companies that have done this over time, that have the infrastructure, they have the laboratories, they have the fiscal tools to be able to monitor every aspect of the inspection process. So the whole aim is to achieve efficiency, to achieve transparency, and it's also part of an attempt to implement the Petroleum Industry Act, which aims to restructure the way oil and gas business is done in Nigeria. So in principle, it's a commendable step that aims to block some of the loopholes when it comes to crude oil theft, illicit capital flight, declaring something on paper different from what is being exported. So those are some of the problems we've lamented about over the years. And so it's good to see that the government is taking the necessary steps to bring private sector efficiency in the monitoring process.
But I guess it will also come to who in the private sector is being given this responsibility, because if it's being given to the man who knows the man in government, we shouldn't expect anything different, as we've seen in many cases in Nigeria, Prof.
Exactly, and I sort of highlighted some of those problems, and you've seen some transparency groups raising two key concerns with what has just been announced. Number one is the process in which the participants have been selected. Concerns whether there was a fair and transparent procurement process, because anything relating to government should go through public procurement, transparent public procurement practices, and there have been concerns whether this was the case in respect of the appointments. That's number one. Of course, number two is that some see that the sudden replacement of those that were doing this before now and may also send the wrong signal to investors in the oil and gas sector in terms of whether there is really certainty, whether when you do business with government, there's certainty of term, because, some were appointed just very recently actually to do this job, and now they have all been replaced with new people. So those concerns and questions will have to be managed carefully because like you mentioned, government business has to be transparent. It should not be about who you know in getting some of these key roles. And so those questions that transparency entities and organizations have raised would have to be carefully addressed by the CBN to instill confidence, and investor confidence is very key in the oil and gas sector.
So do you think perhaps communication from the CBN at this time on the new people or agents or agencies that now constitute this monitoring group, do you think that's what's necessary? Or do you think that, because as you noted, I don't know, perhaps I missed it, where it was announced for the process and open to people to participate in it?
Exactly. I think communication would be very key. And part of transparency is also to make this information available, right? I would have expected the CBN, when announcing these new entities, to sort of also provide information on the procurement process. This is information that should be available on the website of the CBN, for example, and it's not available. So you would think the CBN will walk us through the process leading to the selection of these new participants. When was the procurement process announced? How were they shortlisted? How were they recruited? What is the term? What are their key performance indicators? What are we going to expect from them in terms of bringing clarity, transparency, and sanity really to the oil and gas sector? So when this information is not publicly available, then it leaves room for doubts. It leaves room for people to say, okay, maybe again, it's probably someone who knows someone that was selected, which may not necessarily be the case. So the best way to counter such assumptions is to provide information. We need to enhance transparency, efficiency in the oil and gas sector. The more information that could be readily available will be better in this regard.
So who regulates this group, though? We know the CBN is in charge of that, but I don't know about the technicalities of it. So we have this group now, and they're supposed to monitor the crude exports. Who is above them directly that we can question and ensure that this group is actually doing what they ought to be doing transparently?
So they were appointed and selected by the CBN. So the CBN will be the number one entity that will provide us progress report on whether these private sector inspection agents are complying with laid down rules and whether they are doing their job. So the CBN will be the number one entity. And of course, much of that would have to be with the collaboration of the NNPC as well. So the NNPC, of course, will be closely involved in their activities, as well as the customs, will be involved as well. But ultimately, the hiring entity is the CBN, so we expect a lot from them in providing us regular updates and information on how the appointment of these new pre-inspection enterprises or entities have resulted in greater transparency, have resulted in greater accountability, and have resulted in more transparent management of our resources, which is the ultimate aim here.
So, mentioning NNPCL there, it just reminds me that we have a new man on the board. After how many years Mr. Mele Kyari is no longer leading that entity, it's now Mr. Ojulari. So this is another responsibility on him, and we cannot ask him any question now, seeing that it's less than 24 hours since if he has even resumed in the office yet. But what are your expectations with this change in leadership at the NNPCL?
Well, the announcement is very fresh, and we are all hoping that it will mean greater and much more efficient implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. of course, we can start by congratulating Mr. Ojulari and the entire team for being found worthy of this appointment. And so we to whom much is given, much is expected. So of course, there is a weight of expectation that they will move swiftly into action to ensure the consolidation of the gains we've recorded under the Petroleum Industry Act, to ensure continuity of those gains and to address existing loopholes. One thing I must stress is that government should be seen as continuum. And when dealing in the oil and gas sector that requires a lot of investor confidence, then we should be careful of sweeping changes that will abandon some of the progress made. We just talked about this pre-inspection and entities that have just been appointed. And it would be concerning for investors if we don't consolidate. And then if all of a sudden we're talking about a new set being appointed, for example, and I hope that is not the case. So we need to ensure that continuity in policy making, continuity in the implementation. We need to be very, very careful to avoid things that will rupture investor confidence in our oil and gas sector. Because when investor confidence is not there, then it will open doors for divestment, which we don't want.
So we certainly hope that Mr. Ojulari would continue at least the projects that have started. Another thing, when I heard this announcement was, I do know that Mr. Mele Kyari was also passionate about gas infrastructure, a lot of work going on there. And I do hope that Mr. Ojulari will also look that way, at least continue with the project that have started, because it's common say that Nigeria has more gas than oil, and yet we're not doing much with it.
Yes, and the consoling or the satisfying fact about the gas issue is that this is a direct pivotal policy of the current government, right? So it is a central aspect of President Tinubu's policy to ensure that we maximize the use of our gas resources. So I don't expect that to change. The president has made this very, very clear that we're going to invest in gas infrastructure and we're going to maximize our natural gas resources to regain our position as a leading energy hub in the world. And of course, that is also crucial to energy security. It's crucial to our economic development as well. So I'm confident that the new leadership of NNPCL will continue with those natural gas projects that will address energy poverty, that will address electricity deficits in the country. And I know that those investments would also lead to economic gains as well, as the world tries to achieve a just and inclusive energy transition. I believe that sustaining those investments in gas infrastructure projects will be very key. And I hope that the new leadership of NNPCL will double their efforts in this regard.
All right, I hope so too. Professor Damilola Olaoye, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you so much for your views this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, now let's look at what's happening in the global space. And I know it's all tariff. It's tariff. Today is April 2nd. President Donald Trump has been warning us before now. And today is the day he warned that the reciprocal tariff will begin, even though a little bird did say that it may not be as stiff as initially threatened. But we're waiting for his announcements from the White House that will give more direction and clarity as to how the tariff would look like. But trust the markets and investors, it's been reactions everywhere. For instance, that rollout of President Donald Trump's tariff scheme has been dampening sentiment towards the dollar, prompting investors to look elsewhere for their foreign exchange trades. I wonder how much they can avoid the dollar. The dollar index today, which measures the value of greenback against a basket of major rivals, was just a little change, and the U.S. currency began a steady rise in late 2024, peaked in mid-January. However, the dollar index has seen it instead lose some of those gains in recent times, and it has historically been widely seen as a safe haven asset for investors, given its status as the world's reserve currency and dominance in international borrowing, payment, and trade. When the dollar strengthens, of course, U.S. exports become more expensive, while imports become cheaper. So that is one impact, even before President Trump will give a full picture of how he wants that to be, and implying that we're also while waiting for that announcement, it's been described as the reciprocal tariff implying that U.S. would match other countries, but the White House is reportedly considering 20% charge. Remember, it was supposed to be 50% or match whatever is being given by other countries, and in some cases 25%. But we're hearing that it might go down to 20% charge on most goods and services. And the figure sounds high, but it's lower from what was expected. Now, let's get more clarity on this with our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird. Hi, Maria. Good morning. Today is the D-Day. I don't know if you can catch any sleep at all, because President Trump is determined to keep journalists and everybody awake.
Good morning. Yes, it is an early morning, and it is going to be an interesting and busy day, to say the least, as we're anticipating his announcements to happen around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which should be around 9 p.m. Nigerian time.
So what are we expecting? There's news that perhaps it's not going to be as stiff as initially touted, but what are you hearing?
Yeah, so what we're hearing is that he was anticipating to have his plan put together by Monday. We know that up until Tuesday afternoon, there were still advisors that were working with him to provide him with insight as to what the plan could look like. We know there's a couple of major issues that he wants to address. He wants to obviously address what he feels as though many countries have put tariffs on the U.S., and he wants to ensure that we too are not in a deficit with our tariff exchange. There are many countries that we don't receive as many goods from, but that we trade greatly with and send a lot of and export a lot to. He also wants to address being able to ensure, in as much as he can, to have the U.S. manufacturing back here in the U.S. We also have heard his concerns around the fentanyl epidemic in the U.S. and trying to curb the amount of fentanyl that's entering the U.S. So he has some very key strategic issues that he's hoping that these tariffs will also address. Obviously, the stock market is very concerned. We saw yesterday we had, a mixed day, and we're expecting that today will also be one that people will be concerned about, because the announcements won't happen until 4 p.m. after the stock market closes. And so this is, I think, when you talk about what his plan exactly will look like, we already know what he has stated around China. We already know what Mexico and Canada are anticipating or what they're experiencing. But we're looking at what other countries could be impacted. Will be at a flat tariff across the board, which you've heard, as you mentioned, 20% across the board? Or will there actually be tariffs depending on the type of importing and exporting relationship the U.S. has? This is also going to obviously be a bit of a challenge, because what we hear is that there won't be much time for being able to negotiate tariffs, because they will go into effect immediately. And so for countries that are obviously looking to see how they could potentially negotiate, there will be very limited, if any, time for that. And I think that's where you're seeing investors potentially concerned, because these will be going into effect immediately.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did mention that, because from the news I've been hearing, the White House has been really busy. Countries and prime ministers and presidents coming to lobby and try to find, for instance, the UK and all of that. I wonder if, for instance, in the case of the UK, if there's been a kind of compromise. We know the relationship between the US and the UK is quite tight. So have you heard of anything, any maybe softer ground for the UK, for instance?
Well, what we do know, as you mentioned, there's a relationship between the United States and the UK, which has been a long-lasting friendship, partnership, allies in so many ways. And so the question is whether or not during the day today, there will be preliminary negotiations that will occur, if there will be conversations that will occur between the White House and obviously these countries that they have a tighter relationship with that could potentially impact what is stated at 4 p.m. That, I think, is being kept much closer inside to the White House, and we're not getting as much information on if those preliminary conversations will happen. It's really going to depend upon if there are specified, depending on the country, tariffs that are put in place, or if we see blanket tariffs. But also noting the fact that the president could announce this at 4 p.m., and obviously after the announcements, there could be changes as a result of further negotiation with countries.
Yeah, so what about consumer sentiment back there in the U.S.? How are they taking this? How is it affecting them? The auto players in the auto industry have also been talking about some of the impacts of how this could, drive down to prices and imports and tastes of what's available for Americans for consumption and all of that. So how's this coming together for the consumers?
Well, it's very interesting. I think consumers are wondering. I mean, we heard, of course, the avocado piece, where people were thinking about what is going to be the price of avocados once we have these tariffs, just things that people eat and things that people do each and every day, I think were the initial concerns. But one of the things that's very interesting that you're seeing with the American people and the population here is they're really looking to see where are the opportunities. I think that's a lot of what you're hearing as well, trying to understand the president's plan and to see where in which Americans can actually take part and try to find their way through being able to build economic stability. We know that manufacturing is a huge focal point for the president, and we know that he's looking to bring manufacturing back in. You're starting to see Americans that think through, especially entrepreneurs and business owners, think through how they can work to ensure that they are manufacturing in the U.S. or finding ways to leverage some of that to build their relationships globally, but also understanding what are the needs to be able to do more things in the United States. So it's a very interesting time. You have those who are concerned, but you have others that are really looking for ways in which to fall in line in some way, but to really understand what the president's trying to do and find ways to support businesses in that way.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. And I'm sure President Trump has somewhere on his mind, to drive domestic activities. But are there any conscious policy incentives to also encourage the American people to also look this way of manufacturing and all of that, which it seems the president is trying to get?
Now, that point, I think, is where the American people are hopeful. I think they're hopeful to see some of that. We know there's been a lot of changes with the way in which government spending has happened. And so they're trying to see how those funds will be allocated. We know there's going to be greater focus around the construction industry, funding there, but there have not been set programs as of yet as to how the small business owner can receive and can take advantage of some of the funding or some of the resources to be able to encourage their ability to be able to manufacture home, build at home, use the supplies that are built right here or manufactured right in the U.S.
All right, Maria, thank you so much for those details. I'm sure we'll get a full gist from President Trump at 9 p.m. West African time, and we'll have you again to help us understand how the impact is spreading over there. But thank you so much, Maria Bird. All right, now, well, other stories are not too far away from there in Vietnam. Vietnam's Deputy Prime Minister Ho Duc Phuoc and executives from companies including Vietnam Airlines and Vietjet Aviation will visit the United States. Their plan is to go there this weekend, and it's all about this U.S. tariff. By then, I guess it would have been in place. Well, the two airline officials are expected to meet those from Boeing and some U.S. banks, and the agenda, they say, is to visit the White House, where President Trump perhaps could give concession to some of their products. And Vietnam recently announced a series of measures, including boosting U.S. imports to reduce the trade surplus with Washington, which exceeded $123 billion last year, as it tries to avoid tariffs from the Trump administration. Wish them the best as they try to convince President Trump. Meanwhile, hedge funds dumped stocks and lowered leverage positions in Asian markets last weekend, according to Morgan Stanley, pointing to their defensive stance before President Trump announces that new tariff, which we're expecting later on today. South Korea, onshore Chinese markets, and Taiwan were the four of the sell-off, while hedge funds added short bets in Japan. Morgan Stanley says that Trump is set to impose the duties from today, Wednesday, that could lead to sharp rise in tariff rates on several countries and upend the global trade system. Export-driven Asian markets are particularly vulnerable to tariff risks. China, Vietnam, Japan, and Taiwan have the largest trade surpluses with the U.S., according to recent data from the Treasury. Japan and South Korea stocks have tumbled 6% and 5% respectively since that announcement of a 25% tariff on imported cars on March 26. So China's index and Hong Kong's Hang Seng hit nearly 1 month lows on Monday, still under worries of tariffs. Europe's pharmaceutical sector is bracing for the potential impacts of U.S. tariffs as hopes of an industry-wide exemption by the U.S. fades away. The pharmaceutical industry has until now been exempt from trade levies, but Trump confirmed last week that he would soon impose tariffs on the sector. Drug makers are now lobbying the president for a phased approach to duties on imports to the U.S. And the discussion, they say, might widen even more than that. They're asking for gradual implementation, and that could reduce the immediate financial hit and allow companies time to relocate their manufacturing stateside. Nevertheless, some firms have warned that the lack of clarity is already having negative secondary effects. Ryanair, Europe's largest airline by passenger numbers, has achieved a significant milestone by flying 200.2 million passengers in its fiscal year that ended March. That's the first quarter of this year. Well, this achievement was largely in line with the airline's forecasts and makes Ryanair the first European air to transport 200 million passengers in a single year. In January, Ryanair had predicted its annual traffic would nearly reach the 200 million mark, indicating a 9% increase year on year. The airline also reported that it flew 15 million passengers in March, showing a 10% rise compared to the same month last year. Despite these strong numbers, Ryanair has had to revise its passenger forecast for the coming year for the second time in 3 months. In January, the air reduced its forecast from 210 million to 206 million passengers because of delays in Boeing aircraft delivery. And Folksam Group is Sweden's biggest life insurer. They say that they have divested the entirety of its holdings in Tesla on concerns over worker rights violations by the electric car maker Folksam. One of Sweden's biggest investors said that Tesla's approach to worker rights violated its criteria for investment, while dialogue with the EV maker had proven to be unsuccessful. This drove its decision to offload its stake in Tesla. Folksam has shared this on their website, and it was not immediately clear just how many shares Folksam held in Tesla. But Folksam is valued at about $82.31 billion. Well, Tesla receiving some knocks there from different corners at this time, obviously links the sentiment around Elon Musk. Well, thrown in the automobile, we see Volvo cars sold 70.73 cars, 70,737 cars in March. That's a 10% drop from a year earlier. The Sweden-based company said that that's sending its shares down 3%. Volvo Cars, which is majority owned by China's Geely, said in a statement that sales of fully electric cars plunged 26%. Account for 19% of total sales, with valuations skyrocketing in 2024. Many investors are uneasy about putting more money into the stocks. In Russia, Russia's oil pipeline monopoly Transneft says it has suspended a mooring at the Black Sea port for 90 days following a snap inspection by a transportation watchdog. The commercial seaport is one of Russia's largest exporting outlets, and the closure of one mooring is unlikely to significantly affect the port's operations. The snap checks, which are also being carried out at Taman and other Black Sea ports, are related to massive oil product spill in December. And the action has already resulted in the closure of 2 of 3 moorings at a nearby terminal of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, in which U.S. oil major Chevron uses. And next to Russia, Ukraine's wheat exports are expected to remain high at 1 million metric tons in April against 1.1 million that it had in March. Ukrainian farm producers shared this information, and in their statement, they said that March exports were among the highest of the current season. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Grain Traders Union have said that the Agrarian Producers Union had demanding that the government suspends additions to the mechanism for determining minimum export prices, warning that the changes could halt export. In December, Ukraine introduced a new system for exporting key agrarian goods, including grains, which implies a ban on shipping consignments of goods at prices below those that were set by the Agriculture Ministry. Well, that's it on Business Morning today. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us. Another one awaits you in a couple of hours. That'll be 1 p.m. That'll be Business Incorporated. We'll give you an update from the world of business. And I'll be back with Aniti Edit Amini John Mekwa. Let's make some money.